Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Hymnology. I have today Ashley Cox. She's dropping three wisdom bombs, and Ashley is the founder of Nice Guy Reform School, a podcast for nice guys. She is the first female international emotional analysis and resolution coach for nice guys. She has over 15 years of experience in trauma recovery and teaching. She helps nice guys transform their one-sided, exhausting relationships with women into personal power, sexiness, and more wealth. Well, welcome, Ashley.
Thank you, Shari. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was definitely excited to have you. I've been seeing the kind of meteoric rise in your work with men, and it's always good to have another sister here that only works with men. I want to start with your first wisdom bomb, and it's stay out of the sun zone. So I would love to hear more about this. I'm sure the audience would also love to hear more about this. What do you mean by the sun zone? Because I've never heard that before.
Yeah, so I coined this term having spoken to 2,500 men on a very intimate level. And we often talk about the friend zone as it relates to men with nice guy syndrome, men who aren't in their masculine, who are giving more than they're getting, etc. And there wasn't a term for men who are in relationship already, who are married or in a long term relationship, and their wife treats them more like a son than a partner. So she's controlling. She's controlling him. She's nagging. She's questioning all of his decisions. She's giving him the silent treatment, withholding sex, yelling, talking poorly about him to friends and family, complaining, not letting him see his friends. Men who, maybe previously were in the friend zone end up in the sun zone. So men who are, like I said, just they're lacking confidence, they're insecure, they're overcompensating, and so in dating it looks like the friend zone, but in the friend zone, but in a long-term relationship it looks like the sun zone. And the issue with that, I mean, there's a handful of them. The first one is that a man who is not confident, and I don't mean performative confidence, I mean deep intrinsic confidence. A man who is not confident, who doesn't trust himself, who doesn't respect himself, etc. That kind of person will attract a woman who is more in her masculine because she, has so much trauma that she has to control things to feel safe. And so it's more attractive to find a man who, you can control because he's insecure and he doesn't want you to leave, because he's sourcing his validation through you. And I'll talk more about that in just a few, in terms of the validation. And over time, the biggest issue with this is that a woman who doesn't respect a man won't be attracted to him. And so the sex will dry up. Her sex drive, even just like how turned on she is, it kind of starts to feel like a chore. And he feels that, right? And then she's got this resentment that's building because like her needs aren't being met. And unbeknownst to her, like she doesn't realize maybe she's helped participate in create an environment. Like she has been 50-50 of a dynamic to create that kind of environment, but she's looking at him as to why, she resents him. He's not leading, he's not stepping up. And I don't respect him. And then he's building resentment because he hasn't had sex in forever, or it feels like a chore. And I want men to know that if you're finding yourself doing whatever it takes to quote unquote not make her mad, not step on those eggshells, you're essentially avoiding conflict. And a lot of times, what they'll tell me is it's because they care about her. They don't want to upset her. They naturally want to please her, that sort of thing. Like, I just want you to know that if that's you, it doesn't make her feel safe, you know? it's sort of the other side of the coin. Like if there's a man who, is really abusive, right? Obviously, he's not going to make her feel safe. But also, if you have a man who isn't in his masculine, he's not protecting you, he's not providing for you, he can't tell you no. Well, how can he tell the world no? So, either side, like either extreme of that coin, doesn't create a level of safety. And that respect and that safety are prerequisites to her being attracted to you.
Hmm. That was so eloquent. I don't even know that I have anything to add to that because you just really laid it out there. Whew, okay. I mean, the only thing I can think is I know this is a complex topic. However, have you found that there's at least one root in childhood as to how this shows up?
Yeah, so that actually leads me to truth bomb number two. Do you want to go there?
I'll go there. Yes, I will.
Okay.
Okay. Nothing I do is good enough for her.
If a man tells me this, and many have, I instantly know he's sourcing his validation from her. And I also know that he probably didn't have a strong father figure, because he's seeking this validation externally from the woman. Now, it's not to say that a woman doesn't have a large impact on a man's confidence. Absolutely. Like we
Mhm.
play a role in that for sure. But we can't be the primary people like sourcing that confidence for him. And so what happens in childhood is a boy's emotional anchor shifts from about age 6 or 7, it shifts from the mom to the dad.
Mhm.
And so if the boy never shifted from mom to dad, then
And there
he
was no
continues.
dad,
Right.
right?
Dad could be absent, dad could be abusive, or the one that I actually see the most is dad is just passive. So dad's there,
Mhm.
dad's a quote unquote good dad, but he's the kind of dad that kind of like he gets home from work, he probably works a lot. He might sit around and watch the football game or read the newspaper, and he's not teaching leadership to the son. So that leadership has to be passed on, from one masculine to the other. So like think about it in a tribal setting, the elder men would take the younger men out and teach them how to hunt, right?
Mhm.
And so those lessons are passed down, and the young boys, while they may not be confident at first, they learn confidence through being taught. One, hopefully it's modeled, and then two, when the young boy fails and gets up and tries again, and the dad says, "Don't worry, I've got your back. You've got this. Just tweak this or tweak that." The young boy starts to learn to build confidence intrinsically through the practice that he does with the dad having his back while he's a little wobbly, right? And he gets stronger and stronger and stronger, but he knows the whole
Mhm.
time that dad has his back. And so if the boy never sort of, let's just say, graduates or gets initiated out of mom being the emotional anchor, then what happens is he will continue to source his validation through and from women even as an adult, because as a young boy
Mhm.
he never graduated to using dad as the emotional anchor until he was his own emotional anchor. So first it's the dad, so mom, then the dad, and then you become your own emotional anchor and you start to go out into the world and you're around friends, right? And then it becomes like society and your social circles and things like that. And so it's difficult to go from one to another when you can't really skip a step, right? So what I notice is a lot of my clients, they you know they don't have a lot of male friends,
Mhm.
and so they
I'm
a lot of
thinking
times
of like, yes, I'm thinking of guys I know have this. And I'm like, okay, they don't have hardly any male friends. Like, it's hard to keep male friends. They're constantly on the search for female validation,
yes, yeah,
right? And you can't build a kingdom with a man who needs attention from the peasants, right? Like, you just that's not going to work. So that would be very troubling in a relationship.
yeah, and it puts her as his mother, right? And no one wants to sleep with their son, right? And so
No.
like
Nature built it so that that's not, a woman's
right.
not going to get wet around that. Nature
Ex
designed it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and she will like basically shit test you and shit test you and shit test you to show you that there's a wound there. There's something off, right? And she can feel it. Women are incredible mirrors. We may not have the words for it. She's not going to wake up one day and be like, you know what? I think you never shifted your emotional anchor from your mom to your dad, and now I'm your sort of unconsciously I'm your source of validation. Like she's not going to say that, but she's
Yeah.
going to feel it in her body, and then like she'll try to figure it out, but may or may not have the words for it. But her body will definitely be able to tell.
I find that what you're saying is not necessarily deliberate or intentional by women. I find that it's an for like an unconscious driver. Maybe it's even a survival instinct. And I'm going to say something that I know I was a guest on your show quite a while ago. So we talked about the strong spine, open heart, and because of my work, hard penis. But she's looking to bump up against that hard spine.
Yeah, and if you're seeking validation, then he won't have the spine, right? If he's seeking the validation, he won't have the spine. So like that people pleasing behavior is literally the opposite of the spine, right? And so not only does she not respect you, but now she's feeling like she has to be your mother because she can tell that you're seeking the validation because you're people pleasing her
And
instead of
it's
leading.
exhausting, right? Like
Yeah.
I find most women are exhausted in that type of relationship.
Yeah, and he's exhausted too because he's dancing around like a monkey trying to like finally be enough for her, and it's never enough because he's taking the wrong approach, right? So he's exhausted too. They're both, they get resentful, they go to couples therapy, it probably doesn't work, they end up getting a divorce. It affects this really affects a lot of things
Yeah,
when
that
you
affects
when you sort of
their kids, their finances, their wealth building, then having to heal from the divorce and the self-esteem. And then if you haven't healed it, you take it into your next relationship.
yeah. And a better approach would be like, well, how can you be enough for you? Right. So if you're like, oh, nothing I do is good enough for her, it's like, well, are you enough for you? And typically the answer is no. Typically, these are men when I say, can you look in the mirror and actually like who you see? They're like, I can't even look in the mirror. It's like, well, let's start
Mhm.
there. Let's start there because you've been ruining the relationship you have with yourself because you're just so focused on everyone else that you're not taking care of yourself. You're not keeping your promises to yourself. You've probably gained some weight. You're just not feeling good, right? And so you don't even like you, but you want to be enough for her. Those priorities are off. Once you're enough for you, then it's so funny because women will start to mirror that, and she'll start reflecting that and go, oh my gosh, like he'll get a different response from her.
I'm getting the feeling that this archetype of man is very internally depleted,
Internally, physically, emotionally, a lot of times
perhaps
financially.
financially. Yeah.
hmm Just giving
What
and giving and giving.
Something you said a couple times in this last, you call them truth bombs, which is perfectly fine. Wisdom bomb number two is you talked about the leader or the man having the son's back. And instantly I'm relating that to energetics because the back of the body is the male, the front of the body is the female, right? And so the mother is like, oh, come here, you got wounded, let me give you a hug. And then the father's the back of the body and he's saying, get back out there, son. There's no other way, right? So this even plays into like energetics of the body.
Totally. Yeah, they need to like learn how to fall and get back up, and that's what creates the security within themselves. So then they're not trying to source it from their fancy car or from their six-figure job or from their woman. Like, can you source it through self-love? Can you source it through self-trust, some grit, and those things allow you to take risk versus men who really want to play it safe because they're so terrified of failing because it hits their wound of not being enough.
It sounds like when this sense of emotional safety and guided leadership combined with it being experiential, when that's not had earlier in life, this could actually form a trauma that would be driving all these behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah. It's essentially codependency, you
Mm,
know? If you're dealing with nice guy syndrome, it's codependency. It's covert contracts, I'm gonna do all these things for you, hoping that you won't leave me, you know? And women feel that. It's also creating, because their self-esteem is so low, it's creating a sense of pedestalization. So he's putting her on a
mm-hmm.
pedestal. If you just validate me, then I'll be enough. Well, that's putting her on a pedestal, but energetically, you're putting yourself below her and essentially dragging her down with you. You can't lead like that. Like leadership would be you're going to go first, right? And like you're like, okay, baby, let's go this way, right? And really taking charge, versus like, oh, we can if you want to, and sort of pedestalizing and like putting. It's one thing. Here's what I'll say. It's one thing to be attuned to her and know her desires. That's actually super important.
Mm-hmm.
But it's another thing to completely disregard your own vision, your own sense of direction, what you want, and just go like, just do whatever is not going to make her angry or do whatever is going to make her happy. And then you're not really, you're in a very one sided relationship. And so is that even a relationship, right? So just like a good leader or a CEO, they have to take really good care of themselves, be aware of the people in the organization, be aware of the larger mission, and keep all of these things in mind as they make decisions.
So one thing I tell my clients is that anger is good. When you're getting anger from a woman, she's still invested in you. So do you resonate with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That means that she trusts that she can still bring this material to you, right? It's her attempt, like maybe being vulnerable is a little scary because she doesn't feel safe and probably hasn't for a long time. If you've been pedestalizing her, um, people pleasing, giving her power away. And so, like, it's coming out as, I don't want to be your fucking mother, excuse my language. It's coming out as, like, she's actually scared because she feels you basically open to the elements without you being in your masculine and really covering her. I would be more concerned if she didn't bring any of that material to you. She didn't show any emotion. She didn't trust you without emotion. She starts to shut down. And then often she'll either leave and he's totally blindsided. Oh, we never had an argument. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
or she ends up cheating. Hmm.
Shutting down is like be very wary because she's probably talking to a divorce attorney. Like that's shutting down is you don't want a quiet woman. You're better off with the angry woman than you are the quiet woman.
Yeah.
Shutting
Yeah. Or
down
she'll be
too.
cheating or something. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Never good when a woman's quiet. I can speak for myself on that as well. When I get quiet, oh, you're in deep shit. Yeah. We've passed the point of no return. All right, so wisdom bomb number 3. Being attracted to toxic partners often means you're emotionally unavailable. So, what do you mean by that?
So I had to learn this for myself, first and foremost. I would find myself in relationships where I was trying to save people or relationships where, they were really mean to me, and abusive. And one time, a relationship coach, I was having lunch with her, and she goes, you're choosing them because that means that you don't have to be vulnerable and you don't have to be emotionally available. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so true. And I started looking back at like all the people I chose to date. And men do this too, where, if you can find a damsel in distress that you can save, right? Which eventually, if you look up the drama triangle, eventually, like you may start as a savior, but then eventually you end up as the victim, right? Or she views you as the bad guy. You guys just take turns in this drama triangle.
Mhm.
Um,
Pass the
but
poison.
sorry?
Pass the poison.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's one thing to like being needed. I think that's very natural for men to like being needed. It's
yeah.
another thing to save a woman and to find a woman who needs you so she can't leave. And that's essentially your emotional insurance due to like deep insecurity. And so if she needs me, she won't leave, she won't abandon me and hit that wound of not being enough. It also means that you don't have to open up or truly connect because like you can just blame her as the problem. She's the loud, toxic, crazy one, and so all of the issues are definitely, her fault, and you're doing everything you can possibly do to make her happy, and it's still not working.
Hmm.
Um, and it also allows you to stay in control and avoid vulnerability, instead of like being in a deep, healthy, authentic, connected relationship and then potentially losing it. So it's just a way to sort of protect yourself and stay effectively emotionally unavailable. And she feels that, she'll feel that he's uncomfortable with her emotions and essentially get louder and louder and louder and louder. And it's usually because he's not even comfortable with his own emotions. It's just,
Yes.
we've told boys from a young age, that their emotions are bad. It means they're weak. And so that goes pretty deep as to why men may choose to be emotionally unavailable. We have to take responsibility as a society for basically raising boys to be emotionally unavailable. But ultimately, while it may not be your fault, it's your responsibility to change, if you want to have a healthy relationship and really experience authentic connection.
Absolutely. And there's this whole law of attraction movement that's been going on for many years, ever since The Secret. So as I'm hearing this, I'm thinking that it's not about what you attract, it's about what you keep. So, right? So if you find yourself in these patterns, trends, and you're keeping these relationships or you're trying to make them work on some level, then this really is a deep-seated issue. And if you're just dating and you're finding this and you're like, nope, moving on, then there's something inside of you. It's like, I can't keep this.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, if they continue on with each other, it really says a lot, right? About, if you're on a date with someone and you get insane chemistry with them, well, that person is probably lighting up your trauma, you know, the parts of you that were emotionally neglected, the parts of you that were abused, the parts of you that, nobody asked you how you were doing or gave a shit, right? So this this person who, that you're on a date with, they turn out to be abusive, not care about your feelings, not care about you, right? And that's the one that lit you up. That's the one that you had the most chemistry with because on some level it reminded you of, being emotionally neglected in childhood, not being cared for in childhood. And again, you could have good parents who just didn't ask how you were doing. They just didn't ask. They didn't pay attention. They weren't like invested in your dreams. I hear
Mhm.
this a lot where it's like my parents were good, and but then like as we go on, they have all the symptoms of emotional neglect, and they end up attracting
Yeah.
partners and being attracted to people who emotionally neglect them and don't care about, it's very
Well,
one-sided
and
essentially.
I think a lot of people don't realize that neglect is a form of abuse. It is very damaging. It's just not as blatant as getting knocked upside the head.
Well, you can't pinpoint it. It's harder to pinpoint because it's the absence of something. If you
Yeah.
get knocked upside the head, it's like, oh yeah, that happened because it was something that happened versus something that didn't happen.
Yeah. And how do you know what's normal if you had an absence of something, right? So yeah, neglect is very tricky, but it is absolutely a form of abuse.
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of boys in our society that are now men, experienced it to a certain degree. The question really is how much, and
Yeah.
what can you start to do to stop neglecting yourself and start taking better care of yourself and paying attention to how your body feels and like what you need and advocating for that. And then eventually graduating to, so now that I'm good, now I can bring someone else into my life, right? And now we'll do this together.
I think just because my work is more sexually related, I feel like all of these wisdom bombs equal turn-ons. So when
Yes,
you go in and you heal these and work with these, it's like women are going to be much more turned on around you.
we really do feel it. And
Yeah.
I've seen it in my own relationship. It's like night and day different.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, amazing. I mean, this was really thorough and in depth, and I feel that because I do run a men's group, but I think you might do group training as well as privates. Men seems like they can sometimes hear better when it's coming from outside of themselves. Like, oh, that's me. Like they'll have a light bulb moment. So I feel like speaking with you, there's been a lot of, I think, light bulb moments that would really register for a lot of men watching this.
Oh, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. Sometimes I'll hear, "Oh, I don't know why I didn't think about that before." You know, once I just
Yeah.
hear it, like put it very like if it's put in a very blatant way, it's like, "Here's the thing," and it's like, "Oh, all the light bulbs start to go off." Like, now that you say it, I don't know how I didn't see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's holding up a mirror, right? So
Yeah.
you can see. Yeah. Well, is there anything that you would like to promote that's current for you with your business?
I just have a free nice guy syndrome diagnostic test. So if you're wondering, do I have nice guy syndrome or am I just a nice person? You can take that test. It's 25 questions. They're all yes or no. It's very simple. And it'll give you a score at the end so you can see how at risk you are of having nice guy syndrome versus just being a nice person.
Very cool. I love that distinction. Well, thank you so much for talking to me today. It was truly a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me, Sherry. It's been awesome being here.
Hey, you. Hey, guy, who's learning about sexual health, mixed in with some Tantra, mixed in with some 5 elements of Chinese medicine and some Western medicine. I want to let you know something. I would love it if you would hit my subscribe button and the notification bell. That way, you're going to know when new content is posted every Friday.